Am I the asshole for my petty response to my boyfriend's purposeful incompetence about chores? My boyfriend has started pretending to be bad at basic life shit, like dishes and laundry, like he can't do it, so I do it. I felt pretty frustrated with that and told him straight up that I knew he didn't forget how to clean since he moved in with me. He was always very competent living alone, and I didn't appreciate him forgetting how to do chores. I said that when I asked him to do dishes and he refused and refused until he finally did them wrong, that I was not that stupid. He said that he was trying his best and I was wrong for saying that he was trying to manipulate me. And that from his perspective, I asked him to do something and he did it the best he could, and I kept at him because it wasn't up to my impossibly high standards and he couldn't win. And he wanted me to believe him when he says that he is trying. Anyway, this might be petty, but I decided to give, quote unquote, believing him a try. So, he had bleach stained my favorite little black dress. Instead of getting mad, next time he had a family event, I put it on. He asked me if I was really going to wear that. It looked messy. I said that I loved that dress and understood accidents happen, so I wasn't mad or upset it had bleach spots, actually. I thought it looked kind of cool. He said he really thought it looked bad, and I said if he wants, he could Sharpie on the white spots real quick in the Uber. It ended up looking even worse. Another time, we were having dinner and he had done the dishes, but put some of the cups and bowls in the dishwasher upside down so they filled with dirty dishwasher. I took these cups and bowls, dumped them out in the sink, but didn't wash them further, and served his food in them. He said that it was dirty, and I was like, they just came out of the dishwasher. It's just water. It's fine. He said that no, it was disgusting, and I said it was really no biggie. I was getting over my impossibly high cleanliness standards, and I really didn't think it was that gross. The last time I had cooked for a work party of his, after cooking, the dish needed to cool for about 30 minutes, then be refrigerated. I had plans with my friends that night, and I asked him to put the dish away after it cooled. He forgot. The next morning, he noticed the dish was never refrigerated. I said it was fine, it was just a mistake, and it probably would be fine to eat. There wasn't a lot of meat in it. He got frustrated and said that you can't serve meat left out overnight, even if it's only a little, and I said, oh, I think it should be okay. He did stop being so lazy about chores after he realized that I seemed totally okay with leaving stuff done badly and that he'll be living with it. But I feel a little petty for having been dishonest about it. I actually hate how my bleached dress looked, and my stomach turns at dirty dish soup and unrefrigerated meat. So, am I the asshole for being petty? Reddit, my experience at Astroworld, 2021. Last night was easily the most traumatic of my life. My friends and I camped the chills stage for 6 hours. We were 4 to 5 people away from the front barricade of GA on the right side of the stage. A little before the 30-minute timer went on, someone from the left side threw something very hard at the right side, which resulted in a 20-minute quote-unquote war of very aggressively throwing water bottles and full beer cans. Multiple people were hit in the head. This was when I knew it was going to be bad. When the throwing stopped, it wasn't too bad for a little, but once the timer hit 10 minutes, it fell apart. There was an intense and immediate shove from the back, but this shove came from the side and from the back, which wasn't normal, and it was a huge push that came with no warning. This was my next red flag. 2 more of these shoves happened, and I immediately knew I had to get out immediately. I started calling for security, and the people around me helped me get security's attention and made a path for me to get to the barricade, and I was pulled out. Security escorted me out, but it happened to spit me out to the VIP section, which I didn't even realize. Travis was coming out, so I just jumped right back into the crowd where security had left me, which means I was in VIP. VIP, at least the part of it that I was in, was completely different than general admission. I felt completely safe, and the crowd was having a good mosh pit that didn't put us in danger. I thought I was in general admission, so I spent the entire set thinking that general admission was better now and that people were safe. I had no idea people were dying. I remember thinking it was really odd that Travis had stopped the show multiple times to call for help for people who had passed out, because this was my 5th Travis show and I had never seen him do that. After the set, I meet back up with my friends who tell me that general admission continued to get worse and they got split up. My best friend was pressed into the barricade and was being pushed and shoved like crazy the entire time. She says that security began refusing to take people out over the barricade once Travis came out, saying that if you would have jumped over on your own, they would have cut your wristband. Absolutely disgusting that security would ignore pleads for help with threats like this. My friends saw the medic carts that drove into the crowds, but they didn't realize that people were dying. They thought it was for people who had passed out, so they didn't even mention the carts to me until later, when we started seeing that people were reported dead. We didn't find out about how bad it got until we were all back home. That needs was devastating. Seeing the videos and pictures of the dead bodies online was absolutely scarring. Hearing the stories about the medics not even being trained, the people climbing on the medic carts, and more was even more horrifying. This was my 3rd Astroworld festival, and this was not the festival I know and love. This was something straight out of hell. I have never seen crowds acting like that and hope to God that I never see that again. Knowing that I survived a mass casualty and that I almost stayed in that crowd terrifies me, and the survivor's guilt here is very real. My heart goes out to those who passed and their loved ones. May this never happen again. Reddit, my experience at Astroworld. Who I am in this story is not important. Rather, it is important the things I have now witnessed. Astroworld, Houston, Texas. Travis Scott is the only one performing. I don't know how many people were at the festival, but I do know that every single person was at that stage. My friend and I wanted to be close to the stage, as close as we could possibly get. We were not able to get very close, but we did end up on the side, near the walkway in the middle. Surrounding us were chest-high metal gates, barriers. We stood there for 2 hours, as did every other person. Every gap was filled. Where your feet were placed was where they stayed. Energy rose as the time neared, beginning the show. Within the first 30 seconds of the first song, people began to drown in other people. There were so many people, tall men, women and men were the only thing they could see was the back of the person in front of them. Breathing became something only a few were capable of. The rest were crushed or unable to breathe in the thick, hot air. My friend began to gasp for breath, and she told me we needed to get out. We tried. There was nowhere to go. The shoving got harder and harder. If someone's arms had been up, it was no longer a possibility to put it down. So, people began to choke one another as the mass swayed. It became more and more violent. We began to scream for help. We could see security just a few people over in the walkway in the middle. It got tighter, impossible to breathe, as our lungs were compressed between the bodies of those surrounding us. More people began to scream for help. Some began to collapse. The music continued. Hundreds of people ripped their vocal cords apart, screaming for help, but we were not heard. There was nowhere to go. My friend was trapped between people on every side of her, and she desperately tried to move towards the rail. It was no use. The screaming intensified as more people realized they could not breathe. We begged security to help us, for the performer to see us and know something was wrong. None of that came. We continued to drown more and more. One person fell or collapsed. It doesn't matter how it started. Once one person fell, a hole opened in the ground. It was like watching a Jenga tower topple. Person after person were sucked down. You could not guess from which direction the shove of hundreds of people would come next. You were at the mercy of the wave. I watched my friend be dragged away from me, and I lost sight of her. I began to realize in that moment that there is a way to die that not many people know about. Being trampled to death. I saw terror in every eye that I met, even the ones that told me to breathe and stay calm. We know there was a very big chance some of us would not make it out alive. I was pushed away from the rail into the crowd of people where I could hear from another direction the shrieks of animals. It was happening all around me, these sinkholes of people. I was moved back toward the sinkhole I started at and was pushed to the edge of it. I sunk my feet into the ground, put my arms out, and tried to stop anyone from entering the circle or pushing those already in it. I was shoved further to the ground, my face down at the cold, hard plastic below us, layers of fallen people above them. I began to shriek. I felt a primal terror rip through me, and I am not sure anyone understood the magnitude of the situation below. I screamed. There were people on the floor. There were people unconscious, being trampled by every foot that slammed into the ground as each individual tried to keep themselves upright. I saw his face. I became a shield for him. I think he smiled at me. Then I was shoved to the side. I saw more shoes slammed to the ground, exactly in the spot his body lay, face up. I couldn't help him. I couldn't help any of them. I didn't stop screaming the entire time. No one knew there were people below those that they could see. I almost met the same fate. I was losing balance, and I asked a man to grab me. He pulled me up, and I righted myself for just a fraction of a second before I was sucked back into the crowd. I couldn't take what I saw. I had to get out. I had to get help. I had to do something. Somehow, I went toward the back of the crowd at a guardrail. A man pulled me over it. There were so many people just standing there, like nothing was happening, like people weren't dead a few feet from them. I saw the cameraman, eyes glued to the stage, elevated on a platform that looked directly into the crowd. I climbed the ladder and pointed to the hole, telling him that people were dying. He told me to get off the platform and continued filming. I screamed over and over again. He wouldn't even look in the direction, so I pushed the camera so it pointed toward where I had just come from. He became angry. He called someone else up. I told him the same thing. People were dying. We needed to stop the music. We needed help. We needed attention towards the mass because I thought if only these people were aware, maybe they would do something. The other man grabbed my arm and told me he would push me off the 15-foot platform with no sides if I didn't get down. I told him to help. I told him people were dying. I showed him where. He wouldn't look in the direction either. I was in disbelief. Here were two people that could actually do something, had the power to do something. Cut the camera, call in backup. Pause something. They did nothing. I looked over at the sinkhole. People were screaming, reaching out their hands toward me, calling for help. I couldn't see the floor. The strangest thing happened in that moment. People began to boo at me. They pointed their fury at me, unleashed a rage. I screamed. People were dying over and over. No one would listen. Somehow I ended up on the ladder, going back down mindlessly. I should have ripped that camera to shreds. I looked the other guard in the eyes and told him he was the one responsible for countless deaths. He did nothing. I went under the platform, called 911. The only thing they said was they were calling the medical team in. I told the operator over and over we needed to stop the concert because we just needed a pause. We needed light, awareness of the deaths, nothing. A kid watched me under the platform, watched me break down in tears, explaining how I saw people crushed, stomped on, unconscious. He watched the operator say nothing of use to me. I went out, not sure what to do. Suddenly, two men in red medical shirts, looking confused and lost, bumped into me. I explained everything, and they told me they had gone in and saw nothing. Two girls that were in the pit with me were standing beside me, heard that and helped explain it was there. We led them to it. They climbed the metal gates and went through to the people. Those were the only ones working that were brave that night. I had endless respect for those two men. We waited, the two girls and I, and watched people being thrown over the railing, people trying to escape the cage we had been in. And that was my experience at Astroworld 2021.